Halloween is right around the corner, and I want to talk about my three scariest movies of all time. We're going to start right now. What's happening, friends? Welcome back to the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. This is another episode of Coffee and Kernels, where we talk all about the world of movies, video games, TV shows, and all the glorious things going on within those worlds. We've got another great show for you today, but first I want to invite you to like, comment, subscribe, and check out any of these other great playlists to join in the fun. I sure do appreciate you stopping by. So, like I said, this episode is going to be airing right before October, just a few days before, if I'm not mistaken. And with that comes Halloween. Halloween, one of the funnest times of the year, especially in terms of movies, where you invite all your friends over to your house and indulge in as many scary movies as possible, where you enjoy popcorn, candy if you're into trick-or-treating, or you just go to the store and buy all the discount candy the day after Halloween, which I am notorious for doing myself. But nonetheless, I thought I'd kick off this month by introducing and highlighting my three scariest movies that I've ever seen of all time. Now, before I get into this, I just want to preface that I have not seen every scary movie out there, so I'm sure there are some on my list that probably would make yours, or that wouldn't make your list, or maybe that made mine that would not make yours. So feel free to drop down into the comments below and let me know what your top three horror movies are right after you watch this video, and just let me know what you think and why you thought they were scary. I'd love to hear. Okay, so now how this is going to go, I'm going to give you my top three scariest movies in order from 3 to 1, and then I'll also give one honorable mention that didn't quite make the list, but I really wanted to highlight because I thought it was horrifying. Let's jump in to number 3, which is going to be Paranormal Activity. So for me personally, Paranormal Activity was one of the first movies of its kind. Right now, a lot of people might say that Paranormal Activity is one of the first movies to ever utilize the whole concept of found footage. But the fact of the matter is, the Blair Witch Project, I think, was one of the first movies to actually ever do that, and arguably probably started the found footage genre. However, where Paranormal Activity comes in, and is special in this particular case, is the fact that it combined quote unquote found footage with this idea of paranormal entities and demons and things of that nature. And it did it so well and for such a small amount of money. And it started probably one of the most profitable franchises in movie history, because they made Paranormal Activity for almost nothing. I think the budget was even less than $100,000, and it made millions. Like like percentage wise, it was just so profitable. And I believe there was like 6 or 7 movies that ended up blossoming from this. And the best part was, is it was done really well, and it was really, really horrifying. I'm really trying to remember, based on my show notes, what exactly the first Paranormal Activity made. Let me just double check that here as you guys are waiting. But like I said, it was done so well that I had friends, I had family, I had one cousin in particular who told me that after watching this movie, that she was afraid to sleep without any covers and with her feet dangling off the side of her bed, because of scenes that you can imagine in this movie that might freak a person out from doing that. And plus, we were in high school, right? So some of these things might freak out younger kids more than older people or even adults, but that's all subjective. Now, the budget for this movie, to put into context, the budget for this movie estimated was $15,000. That is insane. And it made $193.4 million at the box office gross. That is insane. That's like making it big in the stock market or in NFTs these days, right? That is buku bucks, and I have no doubt that whatever studio made and financed this production was no doubt happy with the return on their investment and what it led to. So that's just a little bit of context as to another reason why I think this movie was so successful. But more going back into the horror tropes of this movie. Now, just the fact of being afraid to sleep without the covers on your bed with your feet dangling off the side, one, that's really effective, because this movie does a phenomenal job of doing something I like to call show, don't tell. Now, some movies that you might watch out there are really poor at just feeding us all the information with the dialogue rather than showing us what exactly is going on. It's like the whole adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And pictures to me are so much more invaluable than just poor dialogue between characters. And I think Paranormal Activity struck the right balance between that, where it would show us the most horrifying parts of the movie but things and concepts that need a little bit more explanation were told through the eyes of Mika, and I'm trying to remember what the woman's name was, and Katie, Mika and Katie, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the more high concept things were explained through the dialogue and were done really well and concise, and were done so very organically to where it really sold the fact that this was a quote unquote found footage movie. But as we know, this movie was produced on a set and whatnot. But anyways, I just thought this movie struck that balance very well and made it a lot more scary. And Jeremy Johns, I watched his reviews as well. He pointed out a particular scene in this movie that nobody had ever seen done in films before, I don't believe. And that's the scene where you can hear Mika and Katie downstairs talking in the house. And you hear this very loud roar and a smash on the wall. And they go upstairs and they can see Mika's picture is shattered, thus giving off the fact that the demon was upstairs. We got really pissed and just smashed the picture of Mika on the wall. That that whole concept of having something around that you can't see but can see you and hunt you and is stalking you at every moment, that's enough to send shivers down your spine, goosebumps pimpling out of your arms. And that was the most powerful moment in the movie for me, and that was just absolutely insane. It was crazy. And nothing had ever really been done like that in movies before, at least to my knowledge, and it was just done so well, and it's something that still sticks with me 11, 12 years later, because this movie came out in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Fact checking myself real quick. Yeah, October 16th, 2009 was when this movie released, and it was just wow. It was incredible. And even introducing really weird stuff and just the whole concept of curiosity killed the cat, I think is uh the right phrase to use in this movie's case, because this movie explained to us very effectively through the pastor that comes over, and they really sell it because they bring the pastor and Ouija boards into it and all this other really crazy religious shit that just freaks you out, right? Because with religion is such a prevalent part in all of our in all across the world in a lot of people's lives, whether you have a religion or don't. It's just something that exists. And the whole concept of the fact that they explain in this movie that these entities derive and get their power off of maybe weakness, maybe anger, and also curiosity. If I remember the movie correctly, a lot of it came in the form of curiosity. The more attention you give it, the more of a presence it feels and the more powerful it becomes. And in this case, Mika, and in all these paranormal activities, it's always one of the protagonists who always just takes that curiosity too far. Mika wanted to set up video cameras. He wanted to try out the Ouija board. He wanted to give it as much attention as possible because he was so curious, and it ultimately led to their demise and other crazy stuff happening. Without giving away too many spoilers, I know I'm going to be giving away spoilers throughout this podcast episode, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And if you guys want to watch any of these movies, they've been out for a while now, so take that for what you will. But the whole prospect of a lot of this was Mika's fault. Like, he just got so curious, he started putting up cameras everywhere to document at wee hours of the night, and it makes you wonder about your own curiosity. It's like, is my own curiosity going to ever lead to anything that poor happening to in my life or family's life or friends' life or whatever? It just makes you wonder. It makes you think. And this movie just got me thinking in so many different ways, and that's just one of those particular situations. So good on this Paranormal Activity movie for that. What else really struck me about this movie? The fact that this movie really put subtlety into a lot of the things they did. And I think it was the most subtle ideas that really made it powerful, not only with the yelling and the smashing of the photo of Mika, which can be done with almost no special effects whatsoever because of the fact, one, it was done off camera, and two, also like even starting little fires throughout the house, like with the Ouija board, just it spontaneously catching fire in the middle of the night and them rewatching the video footage the next day, or even the fact of the use of a timestamp as these found footage clips are filming. This is the one thing that actually really got me in this movie was time. If you look at each of these movie clips in Paranormal Activity, a lot of the times when crazy stuff starts happening, like when Katie starts getting up and sleepwalking, when she's dragged out of bed, when people are flying around and shit. It's always at like 1, 2, or 3 in the morning. It's never outside of that range. And after I watched this movie, and whenever I woke up in the middle of the night, because I usually have to pee in the middle of the night, might be a little bit too much TMI, but here we are anyway. You start to wonder, and it starts to remind you in this movie, like when you wake up at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, what's going on that I can't see? Because this movie establishes there are things that you can't see that are around and that you should be afraid of, and it's such a new concept in and of itself, but just the subtle placement of a timestamp was enough to freak me out to where I would wake up in the middle of the night and be scared that I couldn't see things that were going on. And that is enough to make you feel vulnerable in your most steady of places in life, your own bed, where you feel uneasy, and just your room, your home, your space, and you're just looking around wondering, oh man, like, is this thing around? Is it freaky? Is there anything around? Is it all in my head? You don't know because you can't see it. And that actually leads me into the next big thing. And I think the most powerful thing that this movie did was the concept of being afraid of things that you can't see. Now, like I said, this movie did a great job of showing us and not telling us. When Mika and Katie are being dragged out of bed, when they're flying around the rooms at points and whatnot, we can't see whatever or whoever's throwing them around or tossing them around, which to me just makes it that much more insane, because they are freaking out at something they can't even see and thus can't defend themselves against. They are defenseless. They have nothing to protect themselves. And when you combine that with the intimacy and the privacy and the security of your own home, it just makes for a very chilling combination that just really gets to your core. And just like I said, the whole idea of fearing something that you can't even see, it's like, how do you fight an invisible man? Not to reference the movie The Invisible Man starring Elizabeth Moss, but anyways, you get the idea. It's like, what do you do with that? And that part to me is just it's freaky. It's insanely scary. This movie was the first of its kind to ever do that particular element, and I think it's one of the most powerful elements in the entirety of Paranormal Activity. And so I will say, friends, this movie, it started, when you combine all those elements, it started, I would argue, a genre that combines found footage and also demonic entity religion sort of things, and created a very successful, very profitable franchise off of it. And to boot, it was just straight up scary as hell. It was so freaky. And I still think about how powerful this movie was to this day. And I watched it when I was in high school, so it's not like I was a little kid watching it. I had had my experience and fair share with scary movies, and it still had an effect on me. So really powerful. And I gotta say, if you do have that yearly party with your friends where you're on the couch watching Halloween movies, this must be a go-to, because it is a horror movie modern day classic. It's crazy. So my friends, that was my number 3 on my list. But I want to know, what did you think of the Paranormal Activity movie or the entire franchise? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. Listen to my second scariest movie of all time. And friends, thanks so much for sticking around. If you're still here, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe at your leisure. It's going to be The Conjuring, directed by James Wan. So this was another pioneer in terms of being a franchise, right? The Conjuring had started up the Conjuring universe because of how successful it was. There were great performances by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and they still crush it in every single one of these Conjuring movies that they're in. And with each time, they continue to elevate their chemistry and just how much fun they are to watch on screen together. And it's really, it's a treat to really watch. Now, the one thing with The Conjuring is the fact that not only did it provide a little bit of novelty in terms of a new franchise, but it also kind of uplifted the horror genre when it was in a bit of a slump. And I would say that today in 2021, the horror genre is kind of back into that slump a little bit. The slump being about the time between when James Wan directed some of his Insidious movies up until the first Conjuring movie. And The Conjuring is just what I needed the horror genre to be, and when I needed it. Excuse me, because of the fact that the one thing that this movie had going for it was the fact that it was just extremely intense. It was about Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are these paranormal investigators who would travel across the country and across the world, in some cases, if you've seen The Conjuring 2, to solve some of these investigative hauntings that have been happening to these families, and they truly provided a service. And we had never really dove in deep into some real life examples in the movie space before. Ed and Lorraine Warren, a lot of these events in these movies were, of course, based on a true story because it's a recount of some of the things they've had to investigate in their career. And it was a very bone chilling, also interesting experience because we got to see some of what the techniques that Ed and Lorraine had to utilize along with their crew, but also a sneak peek into what Lorraine's gift was probably like, which is very spine chilling in and of itself. Let me just kind of touch on that first in this case. Lorraine Warren, according to the movies, had this gift where she could kind of immerse herself into this other, I guess, realm, we'll call it, in these movies where she'd be in the house, and I'll just use the house from this first Conjuring movie as the example. She could kind of like, for almost a lack of a better term, meditate and go into this metaphysical world and like interact with these entities to figure out what their motivations were, why they did what they did, what had happened at the house previously, and in this case, the events that went on in this house. And it would kind of help sort of piece together how they can fix it. And I just thought that was really really cool because it added in some mystery elements into the movie while also keeping it terrifying, because along the way you'd run into recurring haunting characters like the Nun, for example, which there's a spin-off movie for the Nun, and Annabelle the doll, a whole spin-off movie series about Annabelle the doll. And it made the world building in this movie really rich, really exciting, and it gave us as horror movie fans a lot to look forward to. And that in and of itself made the movie extremely special. But not only that, but when you combine that with a lot of James Wan's horror movie techniques, it's just unbelievable. The camera angles that he would use in his cinematography, the lighting and the sounds that he would use would certainly add to that. And he just did such a great job of slowly and subtly building tension to the point where you as an audience member just can't take it anymore. You just want the intensity to end because your heart's pounding out of your chest and you don't know what's going to be coming up next. And this movie did a very good job of doing that. For example, as these kids are starting to see this entity sort of evolve slowly in their rooms as time goes on, it was really, really terrifying. Like when they're in their rooms at night and one of the kids sees it on top of their dresser. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I don't know if you guys can see it with focus in the camera, but I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it because it was so terrifying and scary. And the movie did another great case of showing us a little bit more than telling us. Now, the movie, whenever these entities or whenever the mother of The Conjuring, the mother who played, no, hang on, the mother in the Conjuring movie, when she got possessed in the movie, they did a good job of showing us a little bit and not showing us everything, thus continuing to build on that tension. And just when things got really insane, they wouldn't show us everything right away. They would still leave a little bit of mystery into what is actually happening. And they use sounds like screams. They would cut away to another room while the screaming's going on. It was just so subtle and effective, and it kept the movie from ruining all of its intrigue too early. Now, if the movie, for example, will take the scene very early on with the kids in the room seeing the entity at the top of their wardrobe, just when that entity jumps down on them and starts terrorizing them, the movie cuts away to everyone downstairs just kind of having conversation, and they just hear the screams and they have to run up to rescue the kids. And if they had just let it play out earlier on in the movie where they showed everything with the kids wrestling with this entity, our curiosity would have been waned for this entity because we would have seen what it looks like, what it does, and all that other good stuff. But by them subtly just cutting away to what's going on downstairs and having them react to the screams, it keeps that intrigue alive because it's just left up to our imagination to guess what this entity was doing. And it's enough to make your skin crawl, because there are some things in your imagination that are extremely terrifying, and there are some things in your imagination that are extremely terrifying you haven't even thought of yet. And this movie just let you kind of marinate in that, so to speak. Of course, up until towards the end, when Ed Warren has to perform the exorcism on this demon who's possessed the mother of the movie, and then it sort of gives you what I'll call the full frontal view of this demon and what it does and all the nasty, gross shit that it does. And by then, it's fine, because then it sort of gives us that payoff as to the entity's intrigue. And I thought it just did that slowly over time, really subtly, gradually building tension throughout the movie. And it made the movie so much better and have a ton of payoff by the time everything was said and done. So James Wan is a big part, I think, as to why this movie was successful. And when you combine all those aforementioned elements that I just said, along with great performances from Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, it just made for a powerhouse movie. And it was an absolute treat to watch. And the fact that it turned into an entire franchise was really, really special. And the third installment of the Conjuring universe did come out, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, which wasn't directed by James Wan. I wish it was, but that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But still, continually building on the expertise and excellence of Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga playing as Ed and Lorraine Warren. So, excuse me, it worked out quite well. What else am I missing in this movie that is just not quite coming together right now? I think that about covers a lot of it. The one thing I do want to touch upon, though, that this movie utilizes that's familiar in some cases is the fact of being afraid of things, again, that you can't see. And this is kind of playing off a little bit what I said in Paranormal Activity, where what was really powerful in Paranormal Activity was it was the first time in movies that we've seen something where the antagonist of the movie, into these people, the protagonists, is something that you necessarily can't see, at least not at first, right? And The Conjuring, I think, walks the line between, at first, being afraid of something that you can't see, and then gradually building it into something that you can see, thus fulfilling your imagination and freaking you out even more, because now you've got a face to the action, I guess you could say, which is just wild and bone-chilling. And I think The Conjuring did a good job of spinning the whole thing of being afraid of the unseen to the scene and just doing it in such a way that fulfilled our curiosity and made the movie even better and gave us that payoff that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to wrap up the discussion there. For those reasons, I'm going to say The Conjuring is my second scariest movie of all time, of course, directed by the great James Wan, who's now my favorite horror movie director. But friends, what did you think of The Conjuring when you saw it? Is there another Conjuring movie that's your favorite in that universe? Do you like Annabelle? Do you like The Nun? Do you like Annabelle Creation? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. Thanks so much for sticking around if you're still here. I love you. I appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys want to check out more videos. But now, my scariest movie of all time, the one you've all been waiting for, is going to be another James Wan directed film, and it's Insidious. Insidious is the scariest movie I have ever seen, bar none, in my entire life. This movie, I can still remember where I was, what event I was at, what time of the year it was, what time of night it was, how long I stayed up until because I couldn't sleep, how long after the movie I was scared. And also, to boot all of those together, and this is probably why it's the scariest movie I've ever seen, is because it was really the first pure horror movie that I've ever seen. Now, before this, I had seen things like Jeepers Creepers. I don't count Jeepers Creepers really as a horror film. It's more of a slasher flick. You could probably call it a horror film, but Insidious was really the first scary movie I ever really saw that was truly felt like a pure horror film. And oh my god, did it live up to that hype. Like I said, keeping on all the promises I said earlier, I remember where I was and everything. I was at my cousin's house for her high school graduation party. It was June, and it was a summer night. We all decided to watch Insidious together on pay-per-view. This brings back a couple of years when pay-per-view was a thing, and we just didn't have streaming like we do now. But we decided to pay-per-view Insidious because I'm like, okay, I'll be cool. I'll watch a scary movie with my cousins and my family and everything. And I stayed up. I was so terrified by the time this movie ended that I stayed up. I had to sleep in a bed, covers pulled over my face. I was constantly, my cousin had a lot of mirrors in their house. I was constantly looking left to right, looking at the mirrors to make sure nothing was going to eat me or whatever the fuck. And I couldn't sleep. I did not fall asleep till 4 in the morning. I think I woke up at 6 the next day because I was so terrified. And then for a month after, I was terrified in my own damn house after I went home. I would even be doing small chores like vacuuming around. I think I'd hear something and I'd jump and I'd freak the fuck out. Like, it was so scary to me for so many reasons. And the one thing that will stick with me forever about this movie is there is a scene. I'm not going to put it in the video because I want you guys to go Google this yourself because it freaked me out so bad. And actually, I don't want you guys to Google this image. I want you to actually, to get the full effect of what I might have felt, watch the movie from beginning to end, and you'll know exactly the moment that I am talking about. There is a moment where a certain character is sitting at a certain table, and you get the still image of this entity just hanging out, just sitting there, and it's just comes at you like a crackle of lightning. And oh my god, I have never screamed so loudly in my life. I was terrified. I can still remember me audibly yelling, and now the goosebumps have gone all the way up my body from my legs to my fingernails at this point. But oh my god, it was just so terrifying. And again, this is another example of James Wan building tension expertly, but also hitting you with a truck. It was hitting you with the truck because up until this point, this moment happens about halfway through the movie, maybe two-thirds. You see certain things in this movie, again, sort of like The Conjuring, where you get bits and pieces of this entity and what they're doing, what their intentions are, what's going on. You don't actually see the entity up until this point. So again, by the time you get here, the movie kind of shoves it in your face, and it shoves it in your face because you're not expecting it at all. Like, you're expecting to see it at some point, but you don't expect it in this moment because it's just in the middle of a casual conversation. And I'm even looking around at my house right now to make sure I'm not missing anything. Anybody? Oh God, it's just so freaky. And when it just gets to that moment, and just like, blah, oh my God, I jumped, and I probably threw my popcorn everywhere too if I had any. I don't think I had any at that point, but I was scared. And I want you guys, if you really want to get the full effect, go ahead and watch the movie from beginning and end if you haven't seen it. Or if you just want to save yourself a couple hours, if you wanted to Google image it, I wouldn't blame you. If you Googled like Insidious Demon Face or whatever, you'll get it in a second. But that was it was the most horrifying and remains to be the most horrifying still image of any horror movie I've ever seen in my life. And it still is just, it sticks out in my head like a sore thumb. And again, expertly showcasing James Wan's ability to build tension and keep the tension thereafter. Now, I want to say something I touched upon in the Conjuring movie earlier is the fact that the Conjuring didn't really give you the full frontal image of this demon until toward the end, right? Now, I told you that we get the still image of the demon like 2/3 of the way in the movie. And where this movie is an anomaly because even after that, it succeeds in still making you be scared because you're then terrified to see when else is this demon going to appear, and we're gonna have to see it again because it was so scary that it's like, holy shit, now I'm tangibly afraid of something in this movie. When is it going to appear next? And it's amazing because after that, you'd think the intrigue would drop, and it doesn't. It doesn't. You're still waiting for more to get scared even more. And this film was a horror movie masterpiece. And that's just one image I'm talking about. That's just one image, a few seconds of this movie that freaked me out and made it the scariest movie ever. That's just one moment. There are other things in this movie that it does to make it extremely scary. Now, what are some of those things? I'll start off with the unique concept that this movie introduces. Now, the only reason I know this is because I had the DVD when I was younger and I watched all of the special features for this movie. This movie does something where they combine horror, they combine the paranormal entity sort of thing that we've seen in the two aforementioned movies I've talked about, but also something that they called astral projection movies. Now, what that is in this movie is Patrick Wilson's character. Again, we got another Patrick Wilson in this movie. I'll talk about him and Rose Byrne in a second, where Patrick Wilson's character has this ability in the movie to astral project, meaning that he can transport, kind of like Lorraine Warren did in The Conjuring, to the quote-unquote paranormal world or the entity world or whatever, and actually interact with the things going on within it. It's basically a version of the living interacting with the dead. He can get into that nether region or whatever the hell you call it. And this movie, that's never been done in movies before. It had never been done in movies up until that point where you can see a character actually interact in that type of environment. And that in and of itself was very bone-chilling. It was very bone-chilling. It was very eye-opening. And the way they execute it with the color palettes that they use, the amount of smoke that they use, the close-up shots of some of the very scary entities that Patrick Wilson interacts with in this instance, and the music, and you just combine all of that, and it creates this really fascinating world that none of us have ever seen in horror movies before, at least that I had never seen in horror movies before. And it was just so enriching and terrifying and really entertaining overall. And it was just cool to see. It's something that made the movie stick out to me, and it will make the movie stick out to me till the end of time. Now, that isn't really explored throughout the entirety of the movie. It's not really explored, I would say, until the second half. But this movie is also really strong in the first half of it. And like I said, this movie, James Wan does a great job of building tension, right? And in order to expertly build that tension, sometimes the movie requires a slow burn. The slow burn being the fact that you don't really get a whole lot of horror in the first half of this movie necessarily. You get little teasers, little bits, little pieces to keep you entertained and keep you sunk into the movie and keep you from maybe skipping it all together. But the first half of this movie does a good job of just continuously slow burning it throughout. Like when shit really starts hitting the fan, you're like, holy shit, I'm glad it went for the slow burn because now I'm extra terrified. The things it does in the first half of this movie. So a little bit of context: Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson are wife and husband in this movie. They're raising their kids. Their son Dalton is in a coma, and basically after Dalton gets into this coma in their house, they're finding all these really strange occurrences happening, right? They're hearing noises at night. They're seeing shit that they normally wouldn't see. Like, for example, at one point in the movie, Rose Byrne goes into her daughter's room because she's got a little baby and a young daughter hanging out in another room. And her and Patrick Wilson are just hanging out in the room at night. They hear screams, they hear noises. There's one point where Patrick Wilson, for example, goes downstairs and sees the door just open. Their home alarm system is just going crazy, and they're like, what the heck's going on? Like, because normally that would be, excuse me, evidence of like a home invasion, an intruder in your house, right? And that's where the movie sort of starts out. Just little things that might be human things, human error, like the alarm's going off. That happens in everybody's home's alarm system once in a while. Doors not getting shut. It's like, okay, this could be normal, this could be not, but I guess we'll just keep playing the tension of the movie to find out, and that's where it starts. But then a little later on, going back to Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne hearing shit and then running into their daughter's rooms, there's one night where Rose Byrne is hanging out in their room. She hears something and she goes to check on her kids, and she just sees this shadowy figure standing behind a curtain watching her kids. And she grabs them and sprints out of the room, and they're freaking out. And Patrick Wilson comes in to check on them. I mean, there's nothing, and there's nothing. So then that's when it kind of crosses the threshold slowly. Okay, there's something a little bit more weird going on if the kids are seeing it, if the parents are seeing it. Like, there's something not right here. And they're still trying to cope with it. They're like, okay, it's not unbearable yet. Well, then one time, Rose Byrne is doing the sheets for Dalton because obviously Dalton's still in a coma at this point. She's got to wash everything. Well, she sees blood on the sheets, which, okay, that's kind of normal because maybe Dalton's got an IV in him. They got to keep him alive somehow. Maybe it's just a little bit of blood from his arm. She unfolds the sheet, and it's this claw mark. It's about 3 fingers wide. It is a claw mark, guys, and it's bloody and it's gross, and it's like the camera kind of just slows down a little bit, and you can just see Rose Byrne's reaction. She gives a great performance, her and Patrick Wilson both doing this movie, but she just kind of freezes and freaks out a little bit, and she just does the laundry, and she's like, oh my god. And even to us as the audience, again, just giving us a little glimpse, continuing to build that tension, like, okay, something is definitely wrong now. Like, this is some shit we've never seen before, ever. Like, they're dealing with something paranormal. And to boot, Rose Byrne is a stay-at-home mom, and a lot of this shit happens when she is at home with her kids, and Patrick Wilson is teaching at school, so she's going through all this alone. She's the only adult in her house. Dalton, her oldest son, is in a coma, and she's got 2 young daughters just hanging out with her, so all this crazy shit's happening, and she's waiting outside. After that happens, she's waiting outside really late into the night, waiting for her husband to come home, and her husband, now I'm remembering his name, Patrick Wilson's character, Josh, she's like, Josh, I'm scared. When I go get a drink of water late at night, I can feel eyes watching me. Something's not right. We have to do something. And then he's like, oh, he kind of brushes it off a little bit. And she's like, well, whatever. And hands him the sheets and shows him the claw mark and just walks away. Just walks away. It's like, oh my God. Like, it's just, it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. It really hammers home the point that something is just, it's just wrong. And something's just going wrong. And then that kind of leads me into the other moment in this movie that sort of stuck out to me. there's an intermittent moment between when the alarm system is going crazy, like the very first moment of tension in this movie, and the second where Rose Byrne finds the shadowy figure behind the curtains, is the fact that she's making something in the kitchen in the middle of the day, mind you, in the middle of the day, and I'll touch upon that theme next. She's in the middle of the day making something in the kitchen. And she's obviously got a baby monitor with her because she's got a baby. If you guys don't know what a baby monitor is, it's basically a walkie-talkie. Picture a walkie-talkie where if the baby cries, you can go upstairs, check on the baby, or if the baby's sound asleep, you can hear it snoring. However, she's downstairs making something, and she starts hearing this static on the radio, and it's really creepy shit because of the fact that it's very low in volume. The voice is just kind of muttering gibberish, and then it's just like, and you can just slowly, like, it starts off very low like this, and it's just kind of jumbling together words like this. But then as she audibly gets closer and she can hear it, it starts kind of becoming more audible just like this. And then she gets closer, and then you can start hearing the words that the entity is speaking. And mind you, this is a baby monitor next to the baby, so the entity is talking to the baby. And you can just hear the words building, and you can feel the tension building. And then the last words you can hear from this entity say are, "I want it." And then you can hear it scream loud, and it shakes the house. No! And Rose Byrne freaks the fuck out, runs upstairs, grabs the baby, and it's just like, oh my god. And it was just, oh my god. And it was, oh god, guys, it was so scary. It was so scary, ladies and gentlemen. It was so effective because, again, we can't see this paranormal thing at all. We haven't even seen it yet. We've only heard it, and we're just being terrified and tortured, and the tension's being built, and it was just done so well. I've never seen a scary movie do anything like this ever in my entire life. And the fact that it was my first scary movie and I still haven't seen anything that tops these moments is insane. And to boot, kind of promising what I was going to touch upon earlier, which was, this is all going on during the day, or at least this particular moment's going on during the day, is this movie, it totally crossed the time boundary that I talked about in Paranormal Activity, right? Instead of being only afraid of shit at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock in the morning like I was after Paranormal Activity, after watching Insidious, I was afraid of shit throughout the entire day and night, because a lot of the scary shit that happens in Insidious happens during the day. No amount of sunlight can save you from that. And it's just, the movie, it just sticks with you in that regard, because it's like, okay, scary shit doesn't just happen at night when you can't see shit. It happens during the day, even when you're fully aware of your surroundings and totally comfortable in your surroundings. And it's just, wow. Just wow. What a movie. It was the movie that just kept on giving, and it combined all of these things: the daytime, the nighttime, the sound light, the sun design, the different concepts of astral projection, the slow buildup of tension, continuing to compound on the tension even after it's been shoved in your face. Like, this movie was flawless. It was flawless in that respect. It was such a good horror movie, and it still, it holds up. It holds up no matter what, and I can't wait to watch it again this Halloween. I mean, just for context, guys, this movie was so scary even for the kid actors. The kid who played Dalton in this movie, and this is another thing I learned from the special features. Excuse me again. Sorry, guys, I just ate popcorn before doing this podcast episode. But anyway, this movie, the actor who played Dalton in the special features, James Wan, they interviewed him, and they said that the demon that they made in this movie was so scary to the kids that whenever they'd have to do scenes between the kid who played Dalton and the actor who got maked up for the demon, James Wan would have to take the kid actor, take him to the makeup trailer, and watch the actual actor get into makeup as the demon so that he wouldn't be terrified. He wouldn't be too terrified to do the scene. And I'm like, holy shit, it's even scaring the actors in this movie. Like, I get it, it's a kid actor, but still, it got so drastic that they had to take those measures. It's just, it just blows me away. It blows me away. It kind of reminds me of, if you've ever seen interviews of Finn Wolfhard with, like, the It clown, who plays It? Bill Skarsgård. They talk a little bit about that, but that's just what that reminded me of. But yeah, it was so scary they had to take some of the actors into makeup and watch the actor. It's just, oh my god, it's just wild. James Wan made a masterpiece in this movie. I'm not going to talk about the ending. I'm not going to talk about the ending because of the fact that it leads into the next movie Insidious 2, and it was so bone chilling. I'll just tell you this, it's bone chilling as hell. You're not expecting it, and when it executes and it doesn't explain in words. It doesn't explain in words. It shows you what happened and how the movie plays out. You will it'll send chills up your spine. It'll send chills up your spine. So I want you to do yourself a favor. I want you to watch this movie, my friends. I want you to watch this movie in all of its glory. I hope I didn't give away too many spoilers to where it'll ruin the movie for you. I think I tried to give away spoilers, but be vague enough to where you could still have the intrigue to watch the movie if you haven't yet. I want you to do yourselves a favor, though. Go watch this movie to see how it plays out. You'll see what I mean with tension building, with things even getting crazy after the tension erupts. If you're a horror movie fan, there's something for you to love in this movie. And for all of these reasons, my friends, this was the scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. But I want to know, my friends, what did you think of Insidious? If you've seen it, have you not seen it? Do you know what scene I'm talking about where they show the demon vase? Or what's the scariest movie of all time? Whatever you think. You know where the comment section is. Let me know. This will lead us into my honorable mention. There were a few movies that could have landed on here, but I only wanted to choose one for the sake of being able to talk about it a little bit more in depth. Some of these movies that were going to make this were Sinister. Sinister I thought was pretty scary. The Conjuring 2, it was pretty horrifying. Annabelle Creation was pretty great. There's probably a couple of others that don't really come to mind at this very moment, but the one I wanted to put onto this list was Hereditary. This movie came out just a couple of years ago, directed by Ari Aster. I believe it was his first big, quote unquote, big project where he made this horror movie about, again, this is kind of playing off of the whole entity, demonic religion, demonology sort of thing. This movie really relies on that trope, but this movie does a really interesting thing, and it came out, I believe, in 2018, 2019 maybe, where it walks this line. I'm trying to find a good way to put this. It walks this line of truly being somewhere between paranormal and like religion. It does such this weird combination thing, and also a third element, mental health, and how that might play into this. It's really hard for me to explain that without you watching the movie, so I want you to go ahead and watch this movie if you haven't had a chance. It's worth it. It's terrifying. It's not any longer than an hour 45 if I'm not mistaken, but let me tell you why I thought this movie is so terrifying. So I watched this movie on the 4th of July with some friends in 2018, and I had no idea what I was in for. I was like, okay, this is probably going to be a good horror film. I'm looking for it to be a good horror film. I hope it's a good horror film. I had no idea it was going to go down this batshit crazy path. This movie, if I had to describe it, is just batshit crazy. Like, literally, like, some of the things that you see go on are really fucked up, really wild, and IGN in their review put it best. It is a fascinating tale of a movie that you combine paranormal stuff, mental health, and a family just slowly tearing itself apart. And it's so wild to see all unfold because, like I said, crazy shit just continuously happens. And by the time you watch the end of the movie, you're not only scared, but you're also like, what the hell did I just watch? And I'm also scared to now ride in a car with my head out the window. For reasons that I won't mention, I'll let you watch the movie for yourself. Just wait for the first 15 minutes and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But the movie just takes directions that you wouldn't expect, right? Now, I'm going to have to go into a little bit of spoilers here to talk about why this movie was so effective. But this whole concept of the movie digging into a family's, disposition. And what this movie kind of does a little bit is it plays off of this sort of thing where Toni Collette, she should have won an Oscar in this movie. She gave a great performance. She plays the mother in this movie. She does an excellent job. Oh my god. When she is angry, she is angry as all shit. When she's terrified as all shit. The faces that she makes when she is terrified to portray her horror is, it's just undescribable. But Toni Collette's mother in this movie dies at the very beginning. They're at her funeral, and she mentions that her mother had this very private life, not a whole lot of friends, a lot of mystery going on, and very standoffish and weird. And she mentions that a lot of the friends that she met at her mother's funeral, she never met in real life before. And this movie does a point. Let me get a drink real quick. Sorry, guys. Duty calls with coffee. Throat's getting a little dry. Oh, that is delicious. But anyways, where was I? playing off the whole idea of mystery, right? And there's a lot of strange things about her own mother that she didn't understand, and her mother never really explains to her. So this movie is about Toni Collette really discovering who her mother was, why she did what she did, and how it's impacting her family, and it's terrifying. And this movie does an okay job at building tension. I would say it doesn't do it nearly as well as The Conjuring, Paranormal Activity, or Insidious, otherwise it would be in my top 3, but it does a good job of at least building some tension. Like at the very beginning, it doesn't play on the idea of these could be real life coincidences, right? This couldn't be pipes, this couldn't be air ducts, it couldn't just be weird creaks and moans and groans in your house. This is like crazy shit. There's one night where Toni Collette is cleaning out her mother's room and just kind of looking at some old photo albums. She shuts off the lights in her mom's or in her workshop, and she sees like the shadowy figure. I'm getting again goosebumps just thinking about it, but she sees like the outline of her mother, and she just sits there and freezes. And the movie just lets you bake in the outward image of just this dark shadowy figure that looks like it could be the grandmother in this movie, and you're like, oh shit. And that's a moment that really got me. That was done really, really well because it's dark. You can't really quite tell. And the movie, it's kind of like one of those things is, are your eyes playing tricks on you? Are your eyes playing tricks on you? Because the human mind is powerful. And the movie kind of plays on that very early on, starting to build that tension. But as things continue to keep going on, just the movie becomes so different. The reason being is because as Toni Collette's character, I cannot remember what her name is in this movie for the life of me. I think it's Annie. Annie, yeah, it's Annie. Annie is Toni Collette in this movie. And as Annie is discovering her mother's past, tragedy strikes the family without going too far into it. But this tragedy, it starts blowing the family off the seams. They all start interfighting. All of their family's problems start to come out. And when you combine that with the activities that her mother was doing and the people that she interacted with, it leads into utter chaos, and it ultimately tears the family apart in ways that you just wouldn't expect. Ways you wouldn't expect, ways you couldn't even think of before. And it's just like, it really fucks with your head. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And like I said, the reason why this movie made my honorable mention list is for when you combine all those elements, it's something that is very unique in horror films, and it executes it in such a way to where it really makes you feel disturbed and uneasy and just cringy. And the movie, it came out in, like I said, in 2018, after it kind of in the middle of the Conjuring universe. So like when it was still had a pinnacle, but not quite, something a little different. So it's hard to really put this movie into words, guys, without you guys watching it. So I'm just gonna leave it at that for now and just say it's a family tale that is very picture a really bad family tale with not bad family tale, a very harrowing family tale when you combine that with the horror genre, and that's what you get in this movie. And you'll get a unique experience unlike you'll see in any other horror movie, and that uniqueness is one of the main reasons why it's in my honorable mention. So, my friends, if you've seen Hereditary, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. What was your favorite part about Hereditary? What freaked you out about it? Or if you haven't seen Hereditary, are you going to watch it? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. Okay, my friends, that'll bring us to the end of my favorite horror movies of all time. What are your top 3 horror movies of all time? What is in your honorable mention list? Whatever you think or whatever that list might be, feel free to share it down in the comments below. And that'll do it for this episode of Coffee and Kernels. Once again, thank you so much for stopping. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys are enjoying these and want to get in on the fun. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce, and until next time, have a great day.